Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Bear Alexander, the number one player in the transfer portal in this cycle, has finally had his top 6 contenders for his transfer portal destination. USC, Colorado, Texas, Oregon, Miami, and Penn State make the final 6, and he's committing tonight. So if you do enjoy the content, again, consider subscribing to the channel. Right now, we'll just be talking about some of the best fits. I'll put the crystal ball hat on a little bit and talk about where I think he might go, where I think he might fit in best, and talk about the different relationships that he might have with all of these different teams. And then later tonight, when he makes it final, we'll be back talking about the impact he'll have at the team he's selected. So again, if you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. I can't thank you guys enough for all the support you guys have shown, whether it's 2024 recruiting, whether it's the transfer portal heating up. You guys have been awesome, and we really do appreciate it. All right, let's get into the list. Bear Alexander here. USC, we'll start there. That seems to be the team that's the leader in the clubhouse here. Lincoln Riley has done a phenomenal job adding talent through the transfer portal, especially on the defensive side of the ball. When you talk about best fit, when you talk about where Bear Alexander probably makes the biggest impact, it's probably at USC. And in terms of you look at what held USC back in 2022 and you look at what might hold back USC in 2023, I'll tell you one thing, it's not the offense. With Caleb Williams, the best quarterback in the country, Lincoln Riley, and all the wide receivers, and Cliff Kingsbury, you can add to that list, and all the wide receivers USC has, that offense is going to hang 45, 50 a game. They're not going to be losing football games because they can't score points. The defense is going to be the problem, right? This is a team that allowed over 5 yards per carry to opposing offenses last year, and that's something you got to fix. Bear Alexander would help that in a big way. I mean, this guy is 310 plus pounds. He's phenomenal on the inside. He's been developed a year at Georgia. I think he's a guy that immediately starts at USC. I think he's a guy that immediately makes his defensive line better at USC. And as to the depth of this defense, especially up front, that probably makes the most sense. They seem like they're the leader in the clubhouse. He obviously took his official visit to USC. I'm sure the USC fans, y'all saw all the pictures that Bear Alexander was posting. I love the weather. He seemed to love just the vibe at USC. And so I would say they're, in my mind, if I was putting my crystal ball hat on, they're the leader in the clubhouse here, and it's definitely the best fit in terms of the impact he can have for this program heading into 2023. Next on the list, though, Colorado and Coach Prime. It's at this point, you've kind of learned to not write off Coach Prime. In terms of who has the most impactful recruiting voice at the FBS level right now, it does seem like it's Deion Sanders. And there's no doubt in my mind, Bear Alexander saw the environment and the buzz that's happening in Boulder. I would not be surprised if he's really intrigued to go play for a coach like Coach Prime. And quite frankly, you talk about fits too. Colorado, watching that spring game, they have the talent on the outside. Shadir Sanders looks phenomenal. Travis Hunter playing both sides of the ball looks great. They have some other wide receivers that you're really excited about. What's the one thing Coach Prime's talked about that we need to get better at? It's the trenches. You got to have those bodies up front as well. Bear Alexander is a body. He is a dude that would be probably the most physically gifted guy on that defensive line immediately for Colorado. He'd play a lot of snaps. And you talk about probably the two things that are most impactful for Bear Alexander's commitment. And what's he looking for? He's looking for playing time, because Georgia, that's just the nature of the beast at Georgia, is they have a ton of guys on the defensive line. You're not going to play a ton of snaps per game because of how they got a lot of players to play. And so he's transferring, one, because I think he wants a little bit more playing time, a little bit more snaps. And two, there's no doubt NIL is playing a role. And I mean, the amount of buzz, the amount of eyeballs that are on this Colorado program, no doubt they can make something work for Bear Alexander as well. So that's a really good fit. I probably wouldn't say they're the leader in the clubhouse here. Texas is probably my second team in terms of leader in the clubhouse. Now, they just land Trail earlier in the week. And so the connections here are, he's a native from Texas. He wanted to go to Texas A&M. That's where he was committed to early on in his recruiting process. He obviously can't go back to Texas A&M because he can't transfer within the SEC without sitting out a year here. So Texas is the next school up here. And there's a Denton Ryan connection. He's played football at Denton Ryan. Anthony Hill, JT Sanders, they've played at Denton Ryan. You saw Anthony Hill tweet out at Bear Alexander. Bear Alexander likes to tweet. Yeah, I'm in the weeds here on the recruiting trail. I think there's some serious connections here. So if you were to ask me who's the number 2 team in the clubhouse here that would make the most sense, it's Texas. Now, I think they have a solid inside of that defensive line. But Bear Alexander is going to make whatever defensive line better, wherever he goes. And so Texas is for sure a team to keep an eye on in this Bear Alexander commitment. I think they're probably the next team that makes sense. And the next team that really does make a lot of sense is Oregon, right? He's shown the willingness to go out to the West Coast, right? Obviously took his official visit to USC. Go back to who recruited Bear Alexander out of high school. Dan Lanning was the defensive coordinator when Bear Alexander commits to Georgia. The relationship is still there. And quite frankly, you look at if you a top-end defensive lineman, what coach do you want to play under? What coach has put out so many guys to the NFL? Stan Lanning. And you look at all the guys that they put out in 2021 and 2020, and even in 2022 when he was still there, like Dan Lanning's done a phenomenal job developing defensive linemen. He obviously recruited Bear Alexander out of high school. Oregon's my dark horse here. Again, there's not much to say like they're the leader in the clubhouse for Bear Alexander's commitment, but the relationships are there. Oregon's a program that is building and building fast, and you saw it just later, right? Aaron Flowers was crystal ball to USC the whole way. Then Oregon comes in late and flips him. I wouldn't be surprised if Oregon can do that again. Now the next two are the big time dark horses, where Miami, one of the only schools on this list that he took an official visit for out of his recruitment out of high school, and so Miami's been active in the transfer portal. They've addressed the defensive line. Mario Cristobal has put a very strong emphasis on building the trenches. I think, excuse me, when you look at what he's done in the 2023 class, what he's trying to do in the 2024 class, and what he's done in the transfer portal, there's been a lot of emphasis on we got to get more physical up front. And Bear Alexander would make a lot of sense for being a strong target. And Mario Cristobal, one of the best recruiters in the country. I would not be surprised if Mario Cristobal is making a strong push here. And then finally, Penn State, where it's a phenomenal fit because Penn State needs help on the inside of that defensive line. Just not much connection there. Like you look at where Bear Alexander's been thinking about. It's been a lot of the SEC schools, and then right now in the transfer portal, it's been out west. That would probably be the most surprising. And I was very surprised. These other teams, I was not surprised. I'm not surprised Colorado was in the running. USC, Texas made a lot of sense. And then Oregon and Miami, because he took an official to Miami, because he was recruited out of high school by Dan Lanning, those teams all made sense. Bear Alexander to Penn State made a little less sense, but when you look at what Penn State needs in terms of fit, they do need some help on the inside of that defensive line. So wouldn't be surprised. I shouldn't say that. I would be very surprised if he chooses Penn State. But again, they make the top 6. We'll see what happens. But again, this is a very exciting. I mean, I can't wait to see where he goes. I think it's going to be USC, but I also keep an eye on Texas and Oregon too. Those are probably my 3 teams that I think it's down to. We'll be back tonight, though, talking about where he goes, how he's going to impact this team heading into 2023. And the biggest thing for Bear Alexander, and I think the biggest reason why so many teams are in on him, he's only going into his second year. So he's got at least 2 more years of eligibility, maybe even more. He does seem like a guy that's going to be a 3 and then go to the NFL. But it's rare to find guys in the portal that have this many years of eligibility left that are this good. Normally, if you're transferring out this early, it's because you couldn't find playing time. You probably weren't as good as teams thought you were coming out of high school. It's not the case with Bear Alexander. This dude's a phenomenal player that you're going to get for at least 2 more years. That's why he's the most coveted guy out of the portal. I can't wait to see where he goes. We'll be back tonight talking about where he ends up. Again, can't thank you guys enough for all the support you guys are showing. If you do enjoy the content, subscribe to the channel. Come back tonight. We'll talk about where he ends up going. We'll get a little excited about it then. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.